we're going to take a look at doing some vendor transactions with Sage, also known as Peachtree. And the first step you need to do is to make sure that you are on the correct account. And so here I am on a company called Pony Rides to Go. And so that's not the one I want to be on, so I'm going to close out that company. Now you can, in the current versions of Sage, you can work on multiple companies at one time. However, it is probably best to make sure that you close out a company before working on another. We're going to go down into Explore a sample company, and we're going to use Bellwether Garden Supply. So here we want to take a look specifically at vendor transactions, and you have various navigation aids, and they are over here to your left. And we're going to choose the one that says vendors and purchases. It automatically defaults to opening up on customers and sales because most businesses have more sales transactions than they have other transactions. So this being the most common transactions, they open to that by default first. But we're going to use vendors and purchases. Now, as you look at the source documents that you have for a particular company, you have to analyze what is happening with these source documents. And to be able to know which icon, which button I'm going to press, I have to know what's going on with that transaction. If this is a purchase on account of something, I am going to enter bill. If this is a purchase with cash for something where I don't have a vendor that's already set up, or it's a vendor that I don't do things with ever on account, then I'm going to go into write checks. So you have to look at the source document. Did we just write a check out to say the landlord that we never do things on account with? Then we're going to use write checks. If this is a check written out to a company that we purchase some things at least sometimes on account, then I'm going to go either into enter bill if I just received the bill and the items that go with it, or I'm going to pay bill if it was an invoice that was already previously it received an input, and now I'm paying off on a bill that I'd already received. If you receive the bill and you're paying it on the same day, then you would first enter the bill in enter bills, and then you would go into pay bills to pay it off. In class, we won't be using electronic bill pay, as this is the student version and does not include that sort of thing. But in real life, of course, if you were electronically paying a bill as opposed to paying it with a check, then you would use that button there. Now, we also have some various other buttons. The vendors button is going to show us how to set up a vendor in the first place. We already talked about write checks. The 1099s is if you are required to give a 1099 to a certain individual. Generally, these are due to individuals who do at least $600 worth of services for your company, but they're not an employee. They're an independent contractor, say. And if you want to keep track of these, whenever you set up that vendor, and they are an individual, and they are providing a service as opposed to some kind of products, then you will tell the program, yes, I want you to keep track of this one for 1099 purposes. And then when you go to print 1099s when they're due in January, then all the ones that were over $600 are going to be there and ready. Purchase orders are when you're going to purchase something and you're giving them a legal document that says purchase order and what you're purchasing and how much it is that's in the catalog. And then the vendor will receive that purchase order and then they will try to fill your order. And whatever they actually ship is all that they can bill you for. If they didn't ship something because it's on back order or whatever, they cannot put that on the invoice or bill. So when you get down to enter bills, if you had previously put on a purchase order for that, you can bring up that purchase order and say, okay, these are the items on the purchase order that I received on this bill. And these other ones I didn't receive yet, and so they're just going to hang out there on that purchase order till you actually receive those items, and then you'll receive a bill for those items. Not everything comes with a purchase orders. You might get some things where you get a bill for them, but no purchase order was ever done. So it just depends on the company, and it depends on the circumstances as to whether a purchase order is involved. But in this program, you can input a purchase order. Time and expense tickets button, it deals with a topic in Chapter 6 and Chapter 8 that we'll be going over at a later time. The void checks button will be, of course, if you've already written a check and you sent it and then you needed to void it. So we would go in and use that. Credits and returns we'll talk about in a later YouTube, but that's if you have a credit memo. In other words, you received a shipment from the vendor and you opened it up and it's the wrong color, it's the wrong size, it's busted, something's wrong with it, and you have to return it. And then they're going to credit your account so that you don't have to pay for those things. And then here's our various reports dealing with vendors that we will use. Of course, I can go up here to reports and forms up on my menu bar and see all the different kinds of reports. These reports down here go straight to the vendor related reports that I might most commonly want since I'm on the vendor window. Let's take a look first at putting a vendor in. So I would click on the vendor and then I would click on new vendor. Now, the first thing asking for me, this is the maintain vendor window, and the first thing it's asking me for is a vendor ID. Now, each company is going to have its own coding system. It might have numbers, it might have a combination of letters and numbers. In Bellwether Garden Supply, they generally use the first name of that company and they put it must be in all capitals. This ID is case sensitive, so if you put something in small letters, then you're going to have to use small letters the rest of the time that you bring it up. And Bellwether Garden Supply wants their ID to be in all caps. So if we have computerized accounting, Inc., then we would use computerized would be our vendor ID. And press enter. Now under name we want the actual name of the company. So computerized accounting. Okay. Now on this you see there's a number of tabs: general, addresses, history, and purchase information. On the general tab is some general information. Here's the 1099 type. If computerized accounting was an independent contractor we could click on that and it would keep track of that for us for giving them a 1099. Now, since they are computerized accounting, they are not individuals. We'll just say none, and that way it won't keep track of that. We do need, you can see in blue here where it says expense account. This is asking us what account do we want to use whenever we buy something from computerized accounting. And so if what we're buying from this company is software, then we would want to try to go to some kind of computer and equipment account. If what we bought was software services, like they're actually, computerized accounting is actually doing a service of maybe some end of the month adjusting entries, or they're coming in and installing software for us, something along that line, that would be an expense. And so I would have to try to find an expense that would go and since I doesn't look like I have a software expense or a computer-related services expense, I'm going to go ahead and put this in office expense. Okay, so every time I buy the software services from Computerized Accounting Company, the default is going to say, oh, we're going to debit account 71,000, which is office expense. If what I purchased from this company was inventory, if this was a garden supply type of company, I would have to choose inventory account, which is account 12,000. So you just have to analyze what is it we're purchasing from this company and put that the account that is closely related to that on this expense account. It does not mean, even though they use the word expense, does not mean that you're actually using an expense account. It just means what account are we going to use for whatever it is that we buy from this company normally. You can also override that account number when you actually buy something from that company that's maybe different than usual and you need to override that number, you can. Here's some customizable fields, and Bellwether Garden Supply has a variety, has 5 different customized fields that they want to know about. The second tab just has a variety of different addresses that we might need. The history tab is going to show us, once we do business with this company, it's going to show us when we made purchases from this company and when we paid them off. Okay? If you have a beginning balance with this particular company, you're going to go down here where it says vendor beginning balances. You are going to want to save what you've done. So if we had invoice 1, 2, 3, 4, we would put the invoice number in. The date would be the previous day, month, say, that we had bought something from them on account. So if there was a purchase order, then we could put the purchase order number there. If there wasn't, just leave it blank. Go to the amount and say, how much was this invoice for? It was $1,000. You would put that in. And then it wants to know the accounts payable account and we can see that 20,000 is correct. But if we needed to put it into some other kind of liability account or whatever, we could use that. Okay, we're going to click on Save and then Close. Okay, under the Purchase Info tab, this is where we're going to concern ourselves with the terms. And so here, the terms, it says use default terms, which is the net due in 30 days, the discount in 10 days, and it's 2%. So our terms, our default terms that we set up for as being the default for all vendors was 2/10N/30. Obviously, when we first set up Bellwether Garden Supply. So if this particular company is, say, 3/10N/60, that's not 2/10N/30. And so we would click on this arrow and we would say customize terms for this vendor. And yes, it's still due in a number of days, only instead of 30, it's going to be 60. And we still want to use the discounts, and that is going to be still due in 10 days to get the discount, only the discount amount now is 3. Okay, and there's a variety of things you can do. If it's a company that doesn't have any discounts, you would just uncheck this use discount box, and that would take out the discounts altogether for this particular company. Now this is now going to become the default for just this company. And every time we buy something, it's going to assume that it's 3/10N/60. And if there's ever an invoice that's different than 3/10N/60, we can override just that invoice if we want to. But if we don't override it, it's going to go ahead with this default assumption. Okay, and I've now saved that vendor, and I can close out. And if I go into Vendors, View, and Edit Vendors, I should now see here Computerized, and I can double click on it, and it will bring back that same Maintain Vendors box, and I can add additional information or change the information that I wanted on there.